dock of the bay, wasting time.
Is brought to you live by Bahamas Maritime Connection.
What is maritime?
Maritime, simply put, relates to navigation or commerce on the high seas.
Some say money makes the world go round. I say ships move the money that make the world move.
Who navigates those large international ships?
How often are international ships required to be surveyed and inspected?
Maritime also protects our seas and borders by way of our local Bahamas Defense Corps.
It is very sad to say that out of 1,500 plus ships that are registered under the Bahamian flag, only a very small amount of Bahamians are employed.
Maritime Matters.
And pleasant good evening to you, our valued listening audience. Welcome one, welcome all. Welcome to Maritime Matters. I am your host, Captain Glenn Bain, and I'm joined tonight by my wonderful producer, the greatest, Mr. Craig Gibson. Maritime Matters airs weekly at 17:05 every Tuesday night here on Love 97 FM. That's Tuesdays, every Tuesday at 5:05 p.m. And we go for full 1.5 hours. We are sponsored by Bahamas Maritime Connection Limited, and we are secondly sponsored by 101 Pharmacy and Island Care Pharmacy. The number to call if you want in on this discussion during the show would be 326-8255. Again, if you want to contact us during the show, please feel free to call at any time. 326-8255. Should you wish to listen in on this or any of our previous shows, at any time, you can hit us up on our YouTube page. It's Maritime Matters Bahamas. Just like I love you. Maritime Matters Bahamas. Just go to your YouTube, search Maritime Matters Bahamas, and you will see a litany of our show just pop up. And you can choose. They say beg, choose, refuse. Whichever one of our shows you would wish to watch. If you're driving and tuning with us, please do so cautiously. And remember, as the saying goes, please drive to arrive alive. Tonight, we engage numerous maritime discussions. First of all, we want to talk a little about our fuel prices, as today marks the day that they surge over $1 a gallon for gasoline, over $1.50 per gallon for diesel. So you know, and I know, that will spiral our economy into a very tight-knitted situation, not just in the Bahamas, ladies and gentlemen, but all over the globe, worldwide. And as we say, what is causing this hike in fuel prices at the pump? It all stems from, you know and I know, the tight grip that Iran is holding on the Strait of Hormuz. In other words, 20% of the world's fuel, whether it be natural gas, whether it be crude oil, whether it be diesel, gasoline, avgas, or avionic airplane fuel, 20% of it comes out of the Persian Gulfs. And in addition to that 20% of fuel coming out of the Persian Gulf, we got some 35% of fertilizer. And you know this is the spring period where trees are blossoming and blooming, and they need that good fertilizer to keep planting, to keep nourishing. And the world is now starved of over 35% of that fertilizer. And it's having some severe impact, not at the gas pumps, but we will see that impact later on down in the year when we see the price of plant goods, fruits, vegetables, you name it, in our food stores. Because they're going to have less, the demand is not going to be able to be attained. And what that does to us, it causes us to have to pay more. So we can take this as light as we wish. But those of us who are paying attention to what's going on in the news, we would be quite aware that this war that is going on between the United States partnered with Israel against the country of Iran don't look like it's going to end no time soon. And as a matter of interest, we don't think it's going to end. But guess what? At the same time, we are realizing now that the impact that that war is going to have on the world is going to impact us here at home. It's going to impact those in the great USA. And as we well know, countries like Cuba has been catching, I don't know if we want to call it hell, but they've been catching a hard time. Just recently, they were able to get a tanker into Cuba. And my understanding, based on latest reports, is that the U.S. didn't bother to stop that Russian tanker from going in and providing much needed fuel to Cuba. So we're going to talk about those fuel prices. We're going to talk too about the Rosewood Resort that is proposed to be developed and built on Big Sampson Key. I think I used to say Little Sampson, but it's Big Sampson Key, the big one, the biggest one. Ain't that big, but it's big enough to hold this big Rosewood Resort. We know Rosewood is top of the line. I think Rosewood is perhaps the most expensive resort we have in country. It's going to be pushing with the reef that Atlantis have, and with the other one named, the reef and the other one. They are going to be pushing hard against Rosewood Resort, but they are like the three tops, eh? And so Rosewood at Sampson Key, or proposed for Sampson Key, Big Sampson Key, has received approval from the Town Planning Committee of our government. And they have approval to carry on with the work. And of course, there are a lot of detractors. In addition, the neighbors who feel like that a project of that size It's going to create mega issues for their aesthetically, what word we want to use, environmentally friendly projects that they have in place to facilitate and accommodate their guests. And of course, their guests pay money, they're making money like everybody else, but they don't want Rosewood to come right next to them and set up shop. They feel like that's taken away from the aesthetics and the natural habitat of what they're offering. But at the end of the day, my dear listener, you would know, and I would know, that a resort like Atlantis, being developed on Paradise Island at the time it did, was simply too big to fail. There were no government agencies that were going to put a crossroad or a crossbar in the way of Atlantis being built. We see what happened with the resort in Cable Beach that is so beautiful and we know so well when that was being developed, right? That's the Bahama resort. The owner was eventually ousted. The Exim Bank from China eventually took over. And then eventually in recent times we heard that the owner was compensated. The one who, Sarkis is Merlin, who started and who dreamed about this setup. But today the hotel stands and our country benefits hugely. I want to say humongously, but maybe that's a little far. But boy, that's that in Atlantis. Without those two, we wouldn't be nowhere near where we are as far as employment opportunities in this country, the Bahamas. And there are many more resorts around New Providence and around many of our family islands. Some smaller than others, some bigger than others. But this one called Rosewood Resort in the land, the heart of the land and sea, well, it's on the southern end of the land and sea park, eh? This one is going to be huge for the Exuma Keys, even for mainland Exuma, even for Nassau and Freeport, because the demand for employment for this Rosewood Resort on Big Sampson Key is going to far outweigh the capacity for employment we have in the Exumas, be it the Exuma Keys alone or the Exuma Keys and mainland Exuma. Because really and truly, it's going to very readily exhaust all potential personnel residing at Staniel Key, residing at Black Point, residing at Farmers Key. And those are only 3 native areas or settlements in the Exuma Keys that would have employees for such a resort. So they're going to need a lot of help. They're going to need just like Bimini World, what it is? Bimini the resort in Bimini, North Bimini. What was Bimini Bay now? I think it's I forget, but I can tell you in a minute because I go there every year, right? I know if Mike hear me now, he have killed me. But Resort World Bimini, right? Resort World Bimini. Resort World Bimini was just too big to fail. Because, there were challenges. There were a lot of protests. Especially when they went to put down that dock They still having protests pertaining to Resort World Bimini. But Resort World Bimini today, excuse me, today, yesterday, day before yesterday, last year, year before last, more than 80% of their employees hail from New Providence and Grand Bahama. They're not Biminites. And of course, you know, Bimini is the only island in that entire chain, talking from Great Isaacs all the way down to Orange Key. Anything I know my chart, I know it with my head, because I used to patrol that up and down all the time. So Bimini would be the only island where there would be potential employees available for Resort World in that chain. Where you got Cat Key, the mega rich. They ain't trying to find no jobs in no hotel. Ain't trying to come to Bimini to work. You got another place that employs, but don't have native residents that were living there as a settlement, and that's Ocean Key. Well, of course, that's owned by the cruise ship, so they're very similar to what's going on at Resort World, where they have people coming in to work, and most of those people, over 80%, are from Nassau or New Providence and Grand Bahama. So this Rosewood Resort, while they may have the smaller percentage of employees from Exuma and the Exuma Keys, especially the Exuma Keys, they only got a handful of people available, right? But it gives, and it was stated, the persons from those islands or those settlements an opportunity to return to their settlement, build a house, because guess what? If you from those settlement, all you got is land. It mightn't be yours, but communist land. All you gotta do is build on it, and that's yours. That's how those keys and islands work. I know I'm from the island too, eh? So they go back home and they can get a job with this hotel, just like they could get a job at Atlantis or Bahama, because a lot of them come out of those keys and out of mainland Exum to get jobs at major hotels. So now you got a major hotel right across the road. So you could go back home, make the same kind of money, and start building your house in the place where you born and you from. Call it Back to the Island. Remember Bahamian had that song? Back to the Island, boy. And my boy in the Maya Hill. March that one right up, right? But these people can go back to the island and live at the same level of income without going fishing and catching crab and all the rest of that, right in the place where they were born, where their parents were born, and etc. and etc. etc. And then you'll have fresh people going to those islands. Well, of course, they may not want to, but they will have an opportunity to purchase a piece of, because you know, on the family island, the property ain't cost plenty money like it costs in Nassau. Well, now certain areas now, you got to be careful, because the foreigners that buy most of that out, right? Little small keys like Staniel Key, man, you can hardly find no land there for sale, which you ain't got to pay plenty money for, because the foreigners don't inhabit most of that. Now, if you go to Black Point or Farmers Key, well, Farmers Key ain't got much. I don't think they got it. I don't think Farmers Key got nothing to sell, but Black Point got quite a bit, yeah? And you could set up shop in Black Point if you really want to get out of Nassau and you want to wait to Rosewood. Yeah, when it's time you're off, you just go home to Black Point. You can make Black Point your home. And all that's payments. But I ain't telling them Black Point people easy though. You got to be very careful when you go in them small communities talking, but you looking for land to build house. Well, damn man, if you buy it from them, I think that's the way it is, right? If you're buying it from them farmer, don't come around the town, but you looking for land because your great granddaddy used to live there. No, boy, they don't want you that. Anyway, I digress. Let's get back to Rosewood as a place that is far too big to fail. Just like Atlantis and Bahama was too big to fail for Nassau, just like Resort World Bimini was too big to fail for Bimini, just like Club Med in Coburn Town, is it Coburn Town? San Salvador. I think they in the city, eh? I think so. They out UE. But that was too big to fail. They take up so much employment from the people that reside in San Salvador, and then they bring in a lot of people. But of course, they got a lot of foreigners too, because you know how Club Med go. That's a French place, and they like their own people doing their own thing. That's them nude beach and whatnot. Well, that's Club Med. That's them people business, right? Let's leave that alone. So, we got to talk about the fuel price surge. We want to talk about Rosewood at Sampson Key getting the preliminary support from the town planning unit and the green light from the locals in Stanley Key, Black Point, and Farmers Key. They said, man, we got to do this job for us. This other resort ain't gain us much job. I even know if they gain us no job, right? So they could talk much as they like, but let's do this thing. We want to talk a little, if we get time, and we hope we get some time tonight, right? About the Merchant Shipping Act Amendment 2021. So they made some amendments to our Maritime Act that is responsible for keeping our registry of ships, those big international ships. We got over 1,600 on them, right? Under our flag. They basically wipe out the whole act, repeal and replaced it with this new one. And when they did that, my dear listener, they cut out a lot of things they was responsible for. And boy, look, I write on this, because one of the major things they cut out is the requirement for non-soulless vessels in the Bahamas to carry or have issued to them a local safety certificate. And we need to this. Oh boy, I need to have a whole show on that next week, eh? I hope we get to that good today. Anyway, that's the Merchant Shipping Act Amendment 2021. Last but not least, we want to speak about the Port Authority bill. It's not an act, it's a bill. In other words, these are the proposals to make an act for, right? And this one ain't too bad, right? Because, Port Authority deal with a lot of stuff like the pilots and the this and the that. Oh, they talk a little about pilots and qualification for pilots and areas that need to carry pilots and female pilots in certain areas. And we could talk a lot about that, but we ain't need to talk too much about the pilotage, right? We can have a show just on pilotage soon enough. And then they made some mention of the implementation of, or they want to implement the AIS, the Automatic Identification System, that all vessels visiting our country would be required once they're over 50 feet. And I have some issues with that, because internationally, they're required to be 300 gross tons or more to be mandated to carry an AIS, which in most cases is much longer than 50 feet, eh? Ain't much vessels below 50 feet or 50 feet would be 300 gross tons. Usually they over 100 feet. So I don't know the thought process, but no, I know the thought process behind it. Because remember now, we want them to put on the AIS so we could see if they anchor in anyway, because we want to charge them. We want them to put in the AIS because we want to know when they come in the marina, yes, this, that one. And if they have it on, we want to say, hey, you're breaking our law. But you got to make it make sense. Why would you try to come lower than the international requirement for AIS? These vessels, you think they can install an AIS on their yacht or their speedboat or whatever they have, 50 feet or more, just to come to the Bahamas? You know how much it costs to install an AIS and have that set up and regulated with your radar and all the rest of that? That ain't most of these boats don't even have radar. That's small. And you making it so onerous that because you want to know where they are in your waters, yada, 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 you telling them, oh, you require. Why don't you provide them with an AIS when they reach you and say, well, we want you to have this so we can monitor you. These things cost money. You're not overcharging them for visiting your island or your country. Now you want to make them go and install an AIS to come here? How silly is that? And the reality is, only solar ships need AIS. Only ships that are doing international trade, whether you carry passengers or cargo, required to have AIS. But regular pleasure boats don't require that. Nowhere in the world, only in the Bahamas. Can we make it make sense? Who are we getting guidance and advice from to make these laws? It can't be the BMA. It have to be some nanny goat who don't understand how the real world works when it comes to maritime. Yes, I said it, nanny goat. Because they obviously don't know what they're dealing with. You're already making it difficult and you're going up high on all the price for people to just visit your country by boat. Now you're saying in addition to that, you gotta pay for an AIS which you don't need, what pleasure boats don't even need. And what if you're a commercial ship, you only need it if you over 300 gross tons, and you're telling them they still need it if they're under that? We got to make it make sense, people. Yes, we can put whatever we want to put in our law, but it really need to make sense. We're supposed to be a maritime country. Why don't you get some guidance from the BMA? I'm sure, Mr. Dwayne Hutchison, my good friend, knows better than this. So you only ask him. I sure that. You definitely ask me. You ask Herbert Bain? Did you ask Theo Devaney? These are people who would know. Anyway, the requirement for AIS is part of this Port Authority bill. And again, this coming under the Port Authority. Not even the Bahamas Maritime Authority, who should know about these things. Like my sister Vadney said in London. How silly is that? Right, Ivani? How silly is that, eh? I know. Ladies and gentlemen, those are the topics that we will be engaging all night long. So please, be sure to stay tuned as we delve into those discussions upon return from our first break. You are listening to Maritime Matters.
At One-on-One Pharmacy, our friendly staff is ready to serve you. Visit us today for all your prescription and over-the-counter needs at our East Street South or Charles Saunders Highway locations. We're open Monday through Saturday from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and from 9 to 4 on Sundays. In a rush? Send your refill scripts online at oneononepharmacy.com or ask about our convenient pickup service. One-on-One Pharmacy, providing personal health care with people at heart. At Bahamas Maritime Connection Limited, we offer first-class maritime security services throughout the Bahamas and the wider Caribbean. As experts in maritime security, we specialize in production of ISPS assessments and plans, verification audits, certified familiarization training, and port security consultancy, just to name a few. Our services also include provision of a security force to maintain all required ISPS facility security compliance. For all your maritime security needs, visit us today in Nassau at our East Street South location or in Freeport in the Kipling building. Call us at 392-3515 or follow us on all social media platforms. Bahamas Maritime Connection, your leader in maritime security. Let's help you make the connection.
the morning sun. I'll be sitting when the evening comes, watching the ships roll in. Then I'll watch them roll away again. Yeah. I'm sitting on the dock of the
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. You're listening to Maritime Matters. I am your host, Captain Glenn Bain. Our producer for the night is the great, the one and only, Mr. Craig Gibson. Maritime Matters is weekly at 17:05. That's 5:05 p.m. here on Love 97. The number to call if you want in on the show is 326-8255. That's 326-8255. We are sponsored by Bahamas Maritime Connection Limited, and we secondly sponsored by two companies, 101 Pharmacy here in Nassau and Island Care Pharmacy up there in the second city of Freeport, Grand Bahama. I want to say good night to my good old Annie Mae. Annie Mae is 93 years old, people. Up there in Freeport, and she carrying on. I mean, she living strong. So good night to you, Annie Mae. Now, let's get back to our subject. Okay, we got a caller on the line. Let's do that first. Caller, welcome to Maritime Matters. Thank you so much for calling.
Captain Dan, the phone number that you're advertising is not working.
That's 326-8255. Ain't working?
No, it's not working.
Oh, okay. So you got me on another number.
Yes, sir.
Well, let me tell the people what that is.
You want to give them the number?
Please.
322 5477.
5477. Okay, I'll give that one out. Moving forward. Oh, did we lose that caller? Okay, and that's my favorite caller. Caller, would you please call back? I don't know what happened, 326-8255, but please call us back on the number you just gave, 322-5477. Let's see if that one works. I don't know what happened. I don't think it happened on our end. Hopefully not. But please call back as soon as you could so that we can engage whatever it is that you want us to discuss. In the meantime, I'll go back to our fuel prices surge. Now, if you're living in the Bahamas, as a matter of fact, if you're living anywhere in the world, you would be aware that the price of fuel, if it hasn't gone up as yet in your country, it's pouted. We used to use that word when we were playing three pairs and gambling for money back in the day, right? Pouted means you're ready to go and you only need one more pair before you win. So, our fuel prices today have surged over $1 per gallon. For gas, it's like $1.02 or $1.03 or something like that. Higher than it was. Some 30%. Oh, 20% I understand, based on what the papers say. And for diesel, it's going even higher. Some 30%, $150 or so, added on to whatever it used to be, that 5 whatever, or 6 whatever. So, we know that our jitneys, our dumper trucks, our garbage trucks, all of our commercial vehicles, tractors and you name it, they operate off diesel. So, if the price gone up on them, shouldn't we expect that they need to go up on their price as well so that they could survive? Because this is just the first of what appear or projected to be a series of increases. And why would we say it's projected to be a series? Because as we watch what is going on with this war in the Gulf, in the Persian Gulf, in Iran, I say in Iran and around, because Iran is getting bombed to pieces, and Iran is lashing back out at neighboring countries and at Israel. And so it is a war. And after 1 month, it does not appear that this war is going to end no time soon. What I mean by that, this war don't look like it can end no time soon. You see, for those of you who are not paying attention, because I'm sure anybody who paying attention to what's going on with this war would know that the upper hand seemed to have shifted from the US and Israel over to Iran. Because while Iran is being heavily bombarded, these brothers living underground. They have tunnels way down underground because, it's a very mountainous country. It ain't no flat surface, ain't much flat surface in Iran. It's a mountainous country, and while the bombs hit the top, they're living underneath. They're making weapons underneath. They're hibernating, they're hiding weapons. They have the weapons well stored underneath. They got small boats stored under in those tunnels. So Iran is basically sitting and waiting it out, and every now and then they throw up a couple missiles, and they got more what that thing named with drones. Perhaps that almost because Iran was a supplier of drones around the world. They were supplying Russia with a lot of drones when they were dealing with, and they still are, dealing with the war between Russia and Ukraine. So Iran can give out order. Iran have huge stocks and supplies. Well, they've used quite a few already. But in any event, the bottom line is Iran, because they have a tight-knit grip on the entrance to the Persian Gulf, which is known as the Strait of Hormuz. You see, if you are coming in from the Indian Ocean, is it the Indian Ocean? No, not the Indian Ocean. One of them ocean out there. Coming toward the Persian Gulf, yes, the Indian Ocean. You gotta pass first of all through the Gulf of Oman, because Oman is the country to the south of the Persian Gulf, and they basically go straight around till they reach Yemen. Them and Yemen kind of tie together, right? And Yemen is all along going into the Red Sea to get into the Suez Canal. So you got to go through the Gulf of Oman, and the Gulf of Oman pours into the Strait of Hormuz, and the Strait of Hormuz runs along. It's like you got to go right up to Iran, and it's a very about 20 miles wide space, if all that, between Iran and Saudi Arabia, and a little piece of Oman, that these vessels got to go through in order to get in or out of the Persian Gulf. Now, in the Persian Gulf, you got all kind of countries with basically supply oil, because the Persian Gulf is a very wealthy area, plenty of oil and gas in the Persian Gulf. So countries like Saudi Arabia, which I think is the biggest supplier, or they supply more oil and oil products than any other country in the Persian Gulf. And I think Iran follows them. And then you got countries like Qatar, which really sends out a lot of natural gas. Then you got Kuwait further up the street, which sends out a lot of fuel and plenty, what you call the thing? Fertilizer. And then you get Bahrain and one or two others, right, along that coast there. Iraq still got a piece of that. And those are the countries that produces and supplies over 20% of what the world utilizes for energy. And so when that 1/5 drop out of the bucket, that's got to be replaced. But the other countries that were producing that 80% ain't really producing more than 80 because they don't have the infrastructure in place. Ain't nobody could prepare for 20%. And the 20% that is dropping out, most of it was servicing Europe, Asia. Some Europe, but mainly Asia. And so when that happened, Iran finds itself in a position where it basically shuts down that entire operation. Because any ship that they don't want trying to get in or trying to get out of the Persian Gulf, they let loose attacks of drones, and they could send them underwater like submersibles. They could send them over water. They could send ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and these are all conventional weapons that can sink ships. So even a military ship like an aircraft carrier, a destroyer, a frigate, you name it, assault ship coming, trying to get into the Persian Gulf or trying to get out of the Persian Gulf, they will be sitting ducks to the Iranian weapons. And for that reason, they cannot take that risk. As a matter of fact, all of those warships gotta be like 200 to 300 miles away, because Iran from ashore still has ballistic missiles and stuff that could get to them if they're close enough. So they can't even come near the Gulf of Hormuz without being in fear of attack from Iran, because Iran is on land. This ain't no ship out there that you could sink. You could bomb them till you're tired, but they ain't get nowhere to go. And so Iran now have the upper hand by controlling what's going on in the Persian Gulf. Anything that moves gotta move under their authority. And so that being the case, the world is starving or being starved from the amount of fuel it routinely gets. It's only getting 80%, so the demand is going up. And as the demand go up, prices go up. Supply going down, demand going up. Prices going up with demand. And what that mean? Especially that we cannot see how this war might end. Because the US, along with Israel, is saying for us to stop hitting them, for us to have a ceasefire or to stop this war, we got to make sure Iran can't get, they dismantle anything nuclear. That they agree that they wouldn't attack anybody in this region moving forward. Iran is saying, well, Mr. US and Mr. Israel, yes, y'all bombing us hard and it hurts and we don't want to get bombed no more. But in order for us to give in or allow ships to freely transit the Strait of Hormuz, we need y'all to not only stop bombing us, we need y'all to pull all of your military forces out of the Gulf from all of those countries. We need to know that y'all even ain't gonna try attack us no more. And so you see the standoff. Both of them want opposite things. So who's gonna give in? President Donald Trump is not known to be one to give in to any demands. So we don't see the US and President Netanyahu is even probably worse. So the US and Israel, you see them doing too much bending, or leaning. If anything, they got it broke. And Iran, those people, they can take a beat. Remember they went 7 years fighting Iraq with a war that lasted 7+ years? And at the end of the day, they call it a stalemate? Well, it's only 1 month, and we don't see the damage that the world is receiving as a result of not getting that 20% of fuel worldwide. It needs to stop. But there's no stop in sight. As most of the pundits are saying, there's no off-ramp for the US. You see, they ain't talking about Iran, because Iran are not the aggressors. They didn't start this war. They just the ones who are suffering as a result of this war. So if there's no off-ramp based on the demands that Iran is setting out, then this war can keep going on, Who knows how it will end, how it's going to end, and who knows when it might end. This may go on for another 5 years. Okay, so we got a call on the line? Not quite yet, okay. So, caller, you on Maritime Matters. Thank you so much for calling.
Yes, I'm calling back again to express my...
We're getting some back feed, but was that your phone or our phone that went bad?
I think it's your phone that's out of service. It's saying I called the number that you are advertising, so this is another number that's there.
Yeah, but when you were on last time and we lost you, was it on our end?
Yeah, y'all hung up.
Oh.
Because I dialed the number and I went straight to you, not to the producer.
Okay, fine. So how are you? And how are you? And thank you so much for calling. Where do we want to go now? Because I know you ain't called to talk, but no war.
No, I ain't called to talk no war. I called to talk about these amendments to the Port Authorities Act.
Right.
Right. So in regulations, they're talking about, my concern is by investment in the Bahamian people and to make sure that there's continuum in this industry and growth and development and infrastructure. So when we have a whole bill for 2025 that was enforced, I guess it passed and everything, so it's a bill. They're talking about the training in Section 6A.
Mm-hmm.
They're saying that these persons will be trained for port state control. I don't know if you noticed that.
Which persons they say will be trained for port state control inspections? Because I didn't read that part.
Port authority staff. So, talking about port authority staff being trained to do these inspections and surveys, I guess.
You mean port department staff?
Yeah.
Did they say Port Authority or did they say Port Department? Because that's two different entities.
Okay, let me read it.
Yeah, Port Authority is the board itself. Port Department is those who work for the board and for the ministry.
Okay, so section 19.
Yeah.
It's an amendment to section 19, and it says the Principal Act is amended with the deletion of whatever, and it goes on. But what I'm saying is, for the training and development part of it, it says to cooperate. This is section B.
Mm-hmm.
To cooperate with the public sector and agencies to verify the capacity for reception facilities. Now, this could only be in Nassau because
reception facilities. Reception facilities.
Yeah, for waste. Yeah, for the waste from the generated by the ship.
Okay. Well, you were saying something about training.
Right. I'm going to get to it. It's the same section.
Okay.
So it is saying to generally cooperate with local and international agencies for the purpose of ensuring compliance with national, regional, and international maritime law, to ensure that training programs are made available for port personnel on pollution, and ensuring that procedures for containment and cleanup on oil spills and hazardous substances and other pollutants.
When they say port personnel, they're talking about people ashore. They're not necessarily talking about the government department for port. When they say port personnel, they're talking about, well, it's the ship side and then it's the port personnel side. So they want to make sure provisions are in place that personnel in country are trained to be able to assist with the reception of a base. And what else they say?
So, and then again in the same section it says, because I'm going to get back to you on that one, but to ensure that training programs are made available for port personnel on the certification of port state control officers and conduct maritime casualty investigations, to coordinate with local and international agencies for periodic joint exercises and drills, enhance preparedness for marine pollution incidents, to cooperate with the public sector and agencies for the provisions of hydrographic services.
Right.
To maintain a register of certified fuel oil suppliers operating within the declared port areas as necessary, and enter into agreement with public sector for purposes of fulfilling any provisions in this act. Now, this last section, when you talk about the training, you have a maritime school, right? And a lot of this pollution things would be under the environment protection, right? I mean, because if you're saying that it's the land side, then it wouldn't be the port staff; it would be the environment, the DEPP.
No, it wouldn't be. It wouldn't be the DEPP, because the DEPP don't have nothing to do with the MARPOL Convention. This all comes under the MARPOL Convention. This has not. DEPP deal with what you call it, impact assessments, EIA, and that type of thing, right? They don't deal with ship. They don't deal with ship generated waste.
So they were the ones that put the fine for the spill, for the fuel spill from the ship in Exuma Harbor, right? So when there's an incident, they are the ones that actually do the investigation and make the report.
They do marine investigation?
Yes, for the ship that spilled the oil in Exuma.
Yeah, they did the marine investigation for that?
Yeah.
But DEPP wouldn't have anybody qualified to do a marine investigation.
But you don't know that. That's what I'm saying. And
I know.
Okay. But let me finish my point, right? I'm saying that I have called your show before, and I mentioned that the shipyard, for instance, is advertising for over 300 positions.
Right.
Part-time, temporary, and besides those, they have every day 6 or 7 different positions being advertised individually in the newspapers.
Correct.
So the training, if you are making heads of agreements to develop these areas, we are now recognized as the largest dry docking facility in the region, right? And you advertise it for 300 job opportunities in any one given day. My position is that there should be a specific training institution authorized with qualified teachers and trainers to give these people a fair shot at these jobs instead of having to always import foreigners to come in to the jobs that the government signs agreements for, give land to, and sometimes invest 49% of our assets into the development of these projects. But we didn't follow through with a proper training facility to give these kids the chance to become welders, to become fitters, to become scaffolding, because these are the types of jobs that they're advertising. And as for these training, when it comes, what the Maritime Merchant Shipping Act did was take all of the conventions and just stuff them into the act on the last page, and without a development, without showing how it's going to be done, without fleshing it out. And so there's no boom, there's no growth. We've waited many years for the government to actually implement these or put them into an act that we could now go back and say, well, okay, the government is required to have this person or that institution see to the training and development of these people. So we have officers that are duly qualified and trained that can go and assess the situation sensibly and give an opinion, an educated, experienced opinion on what happened in the oil spill, what happened in the wreck. Just the other day, we had a yacht hit the stanchion on the bridge. Gone viral, this video, right? Nothing was said, nothing was published in the news, the local dailies, nothing. If that bridge was compromised in any way, do we know? Do we know the stanchion is still intact, that nothing fell, nothing broke? Nobody said anything. So when you just jam a regulatory requirement, that means the government then takes the responsibility for any incident, any accident. You can't blame the people if you don't have the things in place to enforce, to regulate. And again, I can make the comparison with the aircraft. You overrun or overshoot the airport. Any incident in the airport is immediately investigated. Immediately, you have these guys pick up their backpacks and they jump on the plane and they go to the family islands. These laws were implemented, made, created, it seems to me, just for Nassau. The family islands are not being considered. They still trying to house all of the family islands into the Nassau-centric mentality, and so the laws are not being created to include them and their specific needs, right? So we have knee-jerk reactions. Oh, somebody died, so we need another ambulance. Somebody had a crash in the boat, so I guess we need another boat down there. You know, it's just a reaction. So here we have now a whole bill, 2025, that was passed and implemented. And so who is responsible for enforcement? And if you lack the ability to enforce it, that means that if there's a casualty, the government is responsible.
I agree with you 1,000%, and I am happy that you put all of that out there, right? And what you're saying is really the way it should be. But let's look at a country like the U.S. Do you know that in the U.S., for casualty investigation, for port state inspection, and all the rest of those things, the entity that deals with those things is the U.S. Coast Guard?
Yeah.
So why is it that our defense force can't replicate that for the Bahamas and have properly qualified people like the Coast Guard do to deal with these same things? So our government needs to plan certain things out. The defense force from the Commodore down needs to be educated as to what happens in the real world by way of shaking hands or holding hands with the BMA, right? Who really knows about these things, by way of getting our National Maritime Training Institute, which is the LJM as it stands, because the government pouring money into that, the BMA pouring money into that, get them up to the speed that they need to be as far as having proper courses based on the SCCW code, having qualified instructors, and having just getting defense force persons in there, getting other persons in there, and planning for those hundreds of jobs at the Grand Bahama Shipyard, which was there now for some 25 years. These jobs ain't just coming up, you know. Yes, they're going to have new dry docks coming in, but these jobs should have been planned for from 25 years ago. And me personally, have had dialogue with the shipyard who's trying on their own without the government even trying to assist to get people trained up for these kind of jobs. But our government is so lousy. And I ain't talking about no administration, the government, because they don't even have a plan to address these things. They don't even have a plan to say when they get into the next shanty town. They don't have a plan to say which island we can put a cruise ship dock to for cruise ships to come in, so we can enhance the family island, that particular island revenue and economic. There are no plans for none of these things, and I always preaching it. Lousy.
Okay, so my comment is that the shipyard has really, they have set aside $3 million per year to train and develop Bahamians in order to assume these jobs. Now, the way they spend that money, by sending 12 to 16, 15 people to London to get the certificate, I think that they should actually implement the beginning and the basic training into BTVI and let the people start welding and get the experience and understanding of the welding process, and then have the trainers who are certified from the institution in London or wherever it is they choose, and let them come in and certify these people for their welding after they've done the training. The Defense Force used to train people at BTVI to do welding.
So why don't we do what countries like the Philippines and India did? Why don't we have national maritime training academies that the government ensures that they up to the speed they need to be to turn out citizens for those areas that are available in country, and have them go to sea and be welders on ships, have them go to sea and be engineers on ships, have them go to sea and be deck officers, so that they could properly qualify in the real world to do classification society type work. Why we gotta go to BTVI who other countries do that? Let's do what the countries do that are providing seafarers. And who do you think this be going to Grand Bahama Shipyard? Most of them be Filipinos, eh? We need to do the thing that we need to do and stop trying to push things in areas where they're necessary.
And then I wanted to say to you, of the previous point that I said I'd get back to, is that the Port Authorities Bill Section 2 says that when considering an application made under Section 1, the minister shall be guided by the Environmental Planning and Protection Act. And B says the technical expertise of the Department of Lands and Surveys, because that's another thing. The seabed lease, that should be it should be now. If Lands and Surveys, a collaboration between Lands and Surveys and the Port Department, should be a completely separate entity, so that you can have a proper registry. With the seabed, we're gonna have the same thing with the Crown Land, where you have to pay a lawyer 2 times or 3 times to get your property surveyed. All of this is just more cost to the consumer if you don't implement this property. If the Port Department is now taking to issuing seabed leases, that should be an institution or the department within itself that has a registry where you pay your government stamp tax to have the seabed properly registered.
And that happens now by way of the Land and Survey Act. The Lands and Survey keeps a registry of all marina seabed leases and whatnot. They were doing that from outside the port. They have a docks committee that meets on an ongoing basis, and they make decisions and not decisions, they make recommendations based on their meetings and forward that for final approval. And that's why the Lands and Survey came under the office of the Prime Minister back then, because of those seabed leases and keeping the registry and all that. So that is already in place.
But this act has given the Port Department the seabed leases.
Well, that's fine, but the system is already in place. So whatever Lands and Survey have in place, they turn those over to the Port Department, and they would then become the custodians, and the Docks Committee will continue to do that. Everything remains the same. There is a system, and there is a register. But they say now the Port Department would become the custodians. I don't think that's a good idea. But if that's what they want to do, that's what they want to do. Just like I don't think it's a good idea for the BMA to say, okay, we now gotten rid of the requirement to issue the local safety certificate, and we can see what the Port Department do about it, because they're not qualified to do it. So it's a bunch of foolishness, and that's why I say I don't know who's the nanny goat that is advising the government on these things, because it makes utterly no sense. How you gonna give the Port Department to do something they're not qualified to do?
I'm not hammering anybody. I'm
hammering them. You ain't gotta hammer them. You can let me hammer them.
An observation, and my problem with all of this is, and I've been preaching this for a long time now, that if you don't put the infrastructure in place to build a nation, you will always have this dissent. Everybody is now trying to figure out how we're going to deal with the fees, how we're going to deal with Trump's tariffs, how we're going to deal with the oil. But if you don't have a foundation to develop the maritime industry, and tourism will begin to fade. We all know that when when whatever system that Trump puts into Cuba is going to attract some of the tourists that are currently visiting or coming here, we're going to see a decline in our tourism industry. So instead of having all this riffraff and everywhere all over the place, making it inconvenient for the smallest vessel to enter, all the complication, all they do is complicate the process for the consumer. And this is why the maritime industry is in chaos, in my opinion.
I agree with you 1,000%. As the saying goes, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And that's where we are, not only with maritime, with this country.
So both of these legislative amendment is only to put more tax on the people.
Absolutely.
Fees on the people, put more complications on the people, which deters the tourists who are coming in, the boaters who are coming in. I'm not saying the fees are high or whatever.
Oh, they're very high compared to other jurisdictions in this region. They're very high.
The Virgin Islands actually is higher than us.
Well, who higher than us?
Yes, sir.
Which one?
The British Virgin Islands.
Man, that's British. Okay, you're right. I talking about regular countries, man.
The British and American are just across the street from each other. So.
Absolutely. Well, okay.
But again, like I said, my point is that these legislations are being jammed down the Bahamian people's throats. This Merchant Shipping Act was approved since this was one of the first legislations that was approved in the Parliament in 21. When this government came in, and it's up until now, June 2026, that is being implemented. And, it should have created an explosion in the industry, because there's so many requirements in order to enforce it. But you don't even have a school dedicated to the development of the people that you need to enforce it. There's requirements, there's certification that is required for these people to board the ship. So when you say the Defense Force, if you have a Defense Force officer, 3 months they go to sea, they rotating through. So you have that person trained up in 3 months, and then they're gone. So you don't have no continuum in what you call the Coast Guard.
Well, if the Coast Guard could do it, if the Coast Guard could do it for the whole U.S., we could do it for the whole Bahamas. There's no excuse. The U.S. Coast Guard could do it for the entire country. Why can't we do it for our country? Our country is much smaller. We may have less people, but we have less responsibility. We could do it if
I don't think
the government have a will to make that happen.
You can compare when you talk about that. You know, you're dealing with mega trillions, and you're dealing with people that don't just have a basic education. You're dealing with specialists, people that are experts in various engineers. You know, the Bahamas government doesn't even have a requirement for an engineer on a vessel, even up until this day.
That's why we got to start with the Defense Force so that they could take care of their own ships, and then they could branch out and start assisting and taking care of these things.
On mail boats. There's no requirement that like how you have a requirement to be a captain.
Yeah, but the same thing happens in the defense. What I'm saying to you, see, you don't know some of the things I know, right? And I could understand your position, and you're absolutely right. But I'm trying to give you the approach we need to make this happen. We can't just, you can't just hope people, we have people in the Defense Force who already been trained up to a certain extent, who are driving ships, who go in the sea. These are the people we should focus on first, because they could now assist from a port state regime perspective in assisting with port state inspection, with casualty investigations. They could actually go in and out, like was proposed when I was in the BMA, in and out of the London office to assist the safety, the investigation and areas in the BMA, so that they could understand, learn, they could start going to school. These things can happen, but we have to plan it.
Well, anyway, announce the number that's working, so in case someone else want to call.
Thank you so much for your call. Your contribution is duly noted and very much on point. I don't mean you could agree on so much things. But yeah, you take care and continue to keep us alert of what's going on. Thank you so much. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, what a call. I think we need to take a break, and when we return, we will get back to our list. Ladies and gentlemen, listen to Maritime Matters. I am your host, Captain Glenn Bain. We will be back shortly.
At One-on-One Pharmacy, our friendly staff is ready to serve you. Visit us today for all your prescription and over-the-counter needs at our East Street South or Charles Saunders Highway locations. We're open Monday through Saturday from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and from 9 to 4 on Sundays. In a rush? Send your refill scripts online at oneononepharmacy.com or ask about our convenient pickup service. One-on-One Pharmacy, providing personal health care with people at heart. At Bahamas Maritime Connection Limited, we offer first-class maritime security services throughout the Bahamas and the wider Caribbean. As experts in maritime security, we specialize in production of ISPS assessments and plans, verification audits, certified familiarization training, and port security consultancy, just to name a few. Our services also include provision of a security force to maintain all required ISPS facility security compliance. For all your maritime security needs, visit us today in Nassau at our East Street South location or in Freeport in the Kipling Building. Call us at 392-3515 or follow us on all social media platforms. Bahamas Maritime Connection, your leader in maritime security. Let's help you make the connection.
Sitting in the morning sun.
Ladies and gentlemen,
I'll be sitting
welcome back. You are tuned in to Maritime Matters. I am your host, Captain Glenn Bain. Now, we have just finished an array of topics. We have just had a call from one of our very avid callers, very informed young lady when it comes to maritime issues. And, you know, she was bringing to light the fact that we have so many opportunities on the table. We have so many opportunities coming up. We have amended our Merchant Shipping Act to bring in or usher in more opportunities, but we don't have the personnel, the capacity of people we need that are certified and qualified in the areas that workers are needed. And you know, I always say this starts with planning. We have a maritime school, and I can tell you our maritime school, compared to national maritime schools in the world, is like a joke. And I have nothing against those who trying to keep it going. But when you're talking about a maritime school, you're talking about preparing persons for maritime employment. You're talking about training people not only to be deck officer to watch and deck captains and engineer or to watch and engineering officers, but you need people to be welders and fitters. You need deckhands. You need surveyors. There's a lot of different things that we could focus on that are needed in country based on our maritime requirements. And you know, I've had many shows where I said that the Royal Bahamas Defense Force is our largest maritime organization in this country, where we have over 1,000 personnel that should be maritime. And we spend a lot of money training them. But they are out of touch with the real world. Because like in Jamaica, where the Jamaican government had insisted that the Jamaica Maritime Authority, which deals with all of their international ships, and they ain't got that much, must be 50 something back in the day, they might have over 100 now, right? But all of the international ships come under that Jamaica Maritime Authority, like how we have the Bahamas Maritime Authority dealing with our 1,600 ships. They made them hold hands and tie together with the Caribbean Maritime Training Institute, which used to be Jamaica Maritime Institute, and upgrade to the extent that they would have professional lecturers, they would have professional programs based on the STCW code, international. And they had people coming from all over the Caribbean to go through that institute, to qualify themselves. And then what they did back in the day is they got a lot of those Jamaican Defense Force Coast Guard officers to get in the real world, in the commercial maritime world, and qualify themselves by going to sea on ships to become master mariners, to become chief engineers, to become engineering officers, deck officers, able seamen, all the rest of that stuff. They tied them in with their fleet of ships. And any other ship they could have gotten jobs on. Yacht masters, you name it. And given them the opportunity, and when they become qualified in those areas, they would be more useful as port state inspectors, as surveyors, small boat surveyors. They'll be more useful as marine investigators, etc., etc., etc. So unless we plan that in, and really this should be projected from those that run the Bahamas Maritime Authority, because they know the need. Captain Dwayne Hutchinson and family, and friends, and company, and colleagues. They should be the ones spearheading this. I shouldn't have to be talking about this like this. When I served in the BMA, I started to put some things in place. And of course, the London officers, they had some issues with me. Because I was putting question to them why they're not enhancing things for Bahamians to get more certified, more qualified. And they would sit on many Bahamians' licenses because they didn't even want to issue them. And a lot of Bahamians came to me and told me, and we had to clear it up. They had to give me some answers, and then those people got their licenses. Because that office is in London, they don't give a rat seed about what goes on in our country. They don't want to be a part of what goes on in our country. They feel like their job in the BMA is to manage the international ships that are owned by this country. They're now trying to get rid of the requirement to issue local safety certificates, which will call for surveys of all non-solar ships registered under the Boat Registration Act, which thousands of ships have to be surveyed now. The Port Department don't have any surveyors. Yes, they can do an inspection, but they can't do a survey. So where these surveys can come from? We have scores of people who went off to California Maritime Academy, scores of people, even more, who went to SUNY State University in New York, and all of these people can do a course that could qualify them to be small boat surveyors. Each one of them could open up an office and say, okay, I'm available for all small boat surveyors that are non-solars. So you could now have 20 companies that these people got to go to, choose from, just like how you got to get your insurance for your boat. You go and get your survey for your boat. And what's so difficult about making that happen? The BMA just don't want to have nothing to do with it. Because copies of these surveys are supposed to go to an entity that can read them and see if something wrong. The Port Department don't have nobody who could do that. This comes under the BMA. So how could you take that requirement out of the Merchant Shipping Act just like that? No, you got to put that back in. Let's put that back in. It belongs there, and it should go back there. I don't know what we could do in this country, but boy, we're doing some stupid things. We got some nanny goats making some decisions for our government who don't have a clue what they're doing when it comes to maritime. And I suppose other areas too. I can talk about maritime because that's the one I know. So ladies and gentlemen, how quickly time flies. I'm not saying when you're having fun. I had some fun though. Tonight we discuss the surge in the fuel prices at the pumps. The reason. The big war that's going on in the Persian Gulf. The choke on the Strait of Hormuz. To stop that 20% of fuel from being generated around the world. So the demand goes up. Supply goes down. And price go up. That's how we get like this. You don't know when that get. Because there's an impasse. But the bombs are still flying all over the place, and that could go on for another 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Well, let's hope it only be 2, 3, 4, 5 months. Then we talk about the Rosewood at Sampson Key. They got the green light. It's too big to fail. Why should we want a resort, the potential to have a resort in the Exuma Keys to fail? And that could provide employment. And I agree with you when you say the aesthetics could be affected. I agree with you when you say some of the man, look, you can't have if you're going to build a house and you can clear down, put down all the trees, you are disturbing the environment to build a house. So now you tell me you can't disturb it to build a hotel? When you build your house, you employ nobody. You might get a little maid or a little gardener there if you got plenty money. But this hotel is going to take on hundreds of employees. And then you got some protesters because they don't want what they get going on while they're employing about 10 people to be affected or impacted in no kind of way. How selfish is that? To not want to see hundreds of Bahamians being employed because you don't want your little thing to be a little disturbed by what you see over there. We also discussed the two legislative changes where the Merchant Shipping Act is going to be amended on the 1st of June this year. And in that amendment, they're going to take out the requirement to have a local safety certificate issued to all non-soulless vessels in the Bahamas. And with that local safety certificate issue would come what? The requirement for surveys. And we can have 20, 30 surveys just like that. And all you got to do is say the word. The survey would issue a local safety certificate. It will also issue a load line certificate. It should also issue a radio certificate. It should also issue a safety hull certificate. And these are things that will say that these vessels are fit to continue carrying people for hire or cargo for hire. And why is it that we wouldn't want to make that happen? Because we got some nanny goats making decision, and the government who don't know no better, listening to them. And I'm not talking about no administration now. I'm talking about the government over the past 25, 30 years. So that's all administration and then some. I don't know what we can do. Then the Port Authority bill wants to come into effect where they doing some things with implementing AIS, putting some requirements, some training in place, this and that. Ain't got no big impact on the Boat Registration Act, but come on, man. Let's get it on. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are fresh out of time. I say to you, thank you for listening to our weekly show, Maritime Matters. I say good night to my good old Auntie May. I say thank you to my sponsors. Bahamas Maritime Connection Limited, Island Care Pharmacy up there in Freeport, and One-on-One Pharmacy here in Nassau. I say to my good producer, Mr. Craig Gibson, thank you so much for keeping on top of things. And again, to my good caller, thank you for listening. With that, ladies and gentlemen, as always, we say Maritime Matters. Tick, 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 tick. Out.